Hi, I'm Haley Grish with BERNINA of America, and welcome to BERNINA Creative Studio. I like to keep a notebook on hand to keep track of my to-do lists or ideas for crafty projects, and personalizing a cover for my notebook lets me add an extra creative touch and also some extra pockets for storing receipts or lists or whatever else I need to keep handy. To create this notebook cover, we're going to start by creating the panels for the pockets on the inside of the cover. To do that, we're going to take two pieces cut to 6 inches by 5 inches, place these right sides together, and pin along the 6-inch edge. For the second pocket, we're going to do the same thing, but with two pieces cut to 6 inches by 7 inches. Again, the right sides together. Pinning the 6-inch edge. And we'll take these to the machine. I'm going to be using Patchwork Foot number 97D for the construction of this project. This is the ideal patchwork foot for our machines with a 9mm stitch width and dual feed. The markings for patchwork on this foot and the power of dual feed make sure that I can get perfect seams every single time. So with our foot attached, we're going to sew these pieces together with a standard 1/4 inch seam. And just chain piece these together. And cut our threads. Now we're going to press these seams open and then with the wrong sides together, and you can top stitch along this edge for a nice clean professional finish. Now we're going to layer our pocket panels together to sit into the side flat panel. So you're going to take one of the 6-inch by 10 3/4 pieces, and then you're going to layer the larger pocket panel on top of that, aligning the sides and the unstitched bottom edge of the pocket. And then the smallest panel on top of that, aligning the same way. And we'll just pin all of these together. And then we'll baste all of our pockets and move on to the next step. To baste these together, I'm going to increase my stitch length all the way to 6mm. And I'm going to sew along this edge with a scant 1/4 inch. Just enough to grab the edge of the fabric, but we want it to be hidden inside our seam allowance, so I'm going to make sure it's nice and close. And when you get to the corners, just pivot around. And cut your threads. So since this pocket panel is going to be on the inside left side of our cover, we're going to create a lining for that. And to do that, we're going to place another 6-inch by 10 3/4 inch panel, just like the one we have in the back here. Place that right sides together with our pocket panel. And you're going to pin along the right-hand side. Creating this lining will keep our raw edges encased and nice and neat. And we'll take it to the machine. Now we'll attach the pocket panel with its lining with a 1/4 inch seam. Now let's press this seam. We're going to take the lining panel and fold it so that we're pressing the seam allowance back towards the lining. And then we're going to fold it all the way over to the back so that that lining is totally tucked back and in. Then you can take this to the machine and top stitch along this pocket edge like we did with the previous pockets, and it's ready to set in the lining. We'll also get ready and set up the flap for the inside of the right cover, just like we did with the previous pockets, aligning right sides together, stitching, and then top stitching with the wrong sides together, like so. And then we can get everything assembled. Now let's start assembling everything together. We're going to take the 16 3/4 by 10 3/4 lining piece, and then we're going to take our side panels, starting with the pocket panel we created. Line that up to the side. Should match up with the top and bottom with our raw edges together, and pin along the raw edge. Then we will do the same with the other side panel, lining up on the opposite edge, meeting all of our raw edges, and pin. Now we will also, at this point, add a little elastic tab to hold a pin. So I have a piece of 1-inch elastic cut to 2 inches long, and we're going to measure 3 inches down from the top edge on the right-hand side, and just fold your elastic in half, and aligning the raw edges, pin that in place. Again, lengthening our stitch to 6 millimeters. So we're going to baste. We'll use our scant 1/4 inch and baste these panels onto the lining. When you get along this side, you're going to feel the difference in bulk with that elastic, and dual feed will just breeze right through it. Now let's prepare our exterior panel. Taking the other piece that's cut to 16 3/4 by 10 3/4, I'm going to add a fusible woven interfacing to the wrong side of this fabric. This fusible woven will add a little extra durability as our notebook sees wear and love. Now let's assemble our lining and exterior panels. With the lining panel right side up, we'll place the exterior panel right side down on top of it, aligning all of our raw edges and corners, and pin around the perimeter. I'm going to mark my start and end points with 2 pins right next to each other. Just keeps me reminded where to start and stop. So with our start and stops marked out, we are ready to sew all the way around our notebook panel. So we're going to sew this perimeter seam with a 3/8 seam allowance. And because we're veering from our trusty 1/4 inch, I'm going to install the seam guide that comes with the number 97D foot. I'm going to align to 3/8 marking on my stitch plate and just tighten this up with the screw and screwdriver. I like to use that seam guide whenever I'm sewing garments or accessories, or anytime I need to be sewing a seam allowance larger than 1/4 inch. My quilter brain always tries to go back to that 1/4, and this keeps me on track. So we'll start at our starting point where we've marked with double pins and start with a couple back stitches just to keep our seam nice and secure, and sew all the way around the perimeter, always lining up the raw edge with our seam guide. And on the last side, as we approach our stop point, again back stitching to secure that seam. Cut your threads, and we can flip. Okay, so now we are going to flip this right side out, but before we do that, make sure you clip the corners to reduce bulk and give yourself nice crisp points. Now we can flip, pulling through that little opening we left at the bottom. Bring everything right side out. You can use a little point turner to help get those corners nice and crisp and pushed all the way out. I like this one because it has a nice rubber tip on one end. It keeps you from stabbing through your fabric in those tight little corners. And with everything flipped all the way out, we'll go around and press this edge so that it's nice and clean before we take it to the machine and top stitch. So for our very last seam, I'm going to switch to the number 10D foot. That's our edge stitch foot. This is going to make top stitching so much easier because all you do is guide the fabric to the center guide on the foot, and your top stitching is even and parallel to the raw edge every time. So with our foot attached, I'm going to start in the middle and kind of on the back panel just to keep things hidden where our seams will overlap. I have to tell the machine what foot I'm using. And I'm going to move my needle position over to -3. Start by securing the seam and get rolling. And you want to make sure we don't sew over our elastic, so and make sure the guide just glides over that. And keep going around. And when we come back to where we started, just overlap our seams a little bit and take a couple back stitches, cut the threads, and we are done. All you have to do now is add your notebook. Just slide the hard covers into the flat pockets at the front and back. And it's ready to go. This pattern could be great to add a little bit of embroidery or even a pieced block to the cover to add a little bit of personalization, but it is up to you to create. I hope you enjoyed this lesson for Bernina Creative Studio. For more classes like this, visit your local Bernina dealer.